You kill the dying cells, which are propagating the dying message. There's no incentive for the system to make people well and keep it well. It's like telling you there's no way that COVID virus came from the COVID lab in Wuhan that makes COVID viruses. Science only knows what is paid to know.
Who are you and what the hell are you doing here?
I see all these like Buddhist and alchemical things around there. That's who I am.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah.
Are you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's actually Bonpo and Buddhist. They're Tibetan Buddhist lineages. And, I just got back from Nepal. I was there for 3 weeks earlier. And I was always big into the, Western alchemical, Western Hermetic, Rosicrucian stuff. And it was like, that sort of mystical thing is in me, but it's like mystical chemist. I was an organic farmer, biodynamic farmer before I was doing this.
Can you explain that?
You mean biodynamic farming?
Yeah.
In organic farming, there's organic farming. Then biodynamic is totally different. It was cool. This soil sorcery. You would, make these different. They would call them the biodynamic preps. These different ways they would, break down different plants, in different animal organs, give them this sort of energy, and then dilute them homeopathically and put them on the land. And, it was very much like an alchemy thing. There was like a solar lunar thing. There's down energy into the earth, build roots and stems, and then up energy into the sky to get things to flower. And, the different stuff they put on the compost. But it was making this dynamic soil that had the microbiome, like we're all trying to generate a good microbiome. That organic farming was the original microbiome work, but then they took this a level higher and started putting, energetics into it, and so that was a really dynamic way to do things. And I was just trying to get the best food as medicine, and eventually, I joked that I went out of organic farming the year Whole Foods came around. There was no money back then. It was just like you were just obsessed with it. And I did a couple of different things and then ended up doing some organic farming research. I went down to Epcot Center to do outreach for Rodale Institute on organic farming, and then got married and went back to school and got a master's and a PhD in environmental toxins. And mercury was the one I did my PhD on. I got a patent there on how to test different forms of mercury, and started my company, Quicksilver Scientific. Quicksilver is means liquid silver. It's the old European word for mercury. So I was doing mercury testing, environmental, and then I went to testing in people. And then I'm like, oh, once you see it in the people, you got to get it out. And everybody's using pharmaceutical chelators back then. We talked about like the Cutler protocol, and they were using DMSA and DMPS, and tried all that on me and just got myself sicker and sicker. And I'm like, this is a bad way to go. There's got to be a way the body does this and I can turn that up. And I was making these products to take mercury out of water. And, it's a kind of chemistry for cleaning wastewater, but I was using it to concentrate mercury in water so I could analyze it. And I was like, wait, you could take these through your gut and pull out all the mercury through there, and I cleaned these things all up so I could eat them. And I'd been taking the chelators, it got me really sick. And I started taking this stuff called IMD, intestinal metal detox, and the little silica particles r- just coated in all these sulfhydryl groups. It was like putting DMPS on a little sand particle, and you eat it. And that would capture everything in the GI, free up the GI, and let the liver dump more in there. And instead of the chelators pushing everything through the very sensitive kidneys. And so all that was a totally different way to detox, and it totally got me better. And then I showed that, my early mentors were like the big early mercury detox guys, Dietrich Klinghardt, Hal Huggins. These guys took this stuff into practice right away and started using it and really liked it. And then I'm like, wait, why did that work so well? And then I understood more about the glutathione system and how you link mercury in your tissues onto glutathione, bring it down to the liver, dump it out with a bile, bind it up in the GI. So then I had to make glutathione that would get into the body.
Which is not easy.
No, because the capsule would break down, you'd
Mm.
break it down into, amino acids, you'd have to absorb them, put it back together. You can't do the injection as a supplement, nebulizing, all these things, and somebody said, "Hey, have you looked at liposomes?" And I tried some of the liposomal glutathione that was out there, it wasn't really doing anything. Then I tried one that was pretty good, and I'm like, "Whoa, yeah, that's good," but there was some things I didn't really like about it, and they wouldn't let us private label it, and I'm like, "Well, I'm just gonna make this," and then first I had somebody else make it for me, and I'm like, "Oh, this is not what I want." Then I just started making them. I started obsessing on that until I learned how to really dial it in, and I had a mentor here near Boulder just in the particle technology and how to measure the particles and what are good particles and not good particles. Those the liposome or nano-emulsion particles, and I got really good, and I remember he said to me, he goes, "You're gonna be the one." I'm like, "What do you mean the one?" He goes, "You know how many supplement companies call me and ask me to do liposomes and this and that and wanna show me their stuff and it's all junk? You're the one who's gonna do it right." And I'm like, "Cool." Turned
Challenge
out he was
accepted,
right.
yeah.
And so then we just expanded from there, just doing mercury detox, then we're doing all the metals, then we're doing all the toxins, then we're doing cardiometabolic stuff, then we're doing immune stuff, then we're doing hormones, and then we're doing longevity, now we're doing peptides. We're just using that delivery platform and our knowledge of biochemistry to put together stuff that really works.
So, you said a lot of interesting things I wanna dig into. Can you explain liposomal, why it's important for us, and why we want it to be attached to the supplements we're taking?
So liposome looks like a little cell, but much, much smaller than a cell. So you're making it out of phospholipids, same thing that your lipid bilayer membrane of your cell is made out of. And you make this little cell and you tuck the nutrient in there and you make it small enough that it'll absorb right through your mucous membranes of your mouth into circulation, and what you swallow will go to your stomach, upper GI, right into circulation. Now, why do you need that? So certain compounds, like you eat some amino acids, you have transporters that take those amino acids and pull them into the blood. That's how you digest and live. You have transporters for a lot of the nutritional compounds for you know, the the for your carbohydrates and the amino acids for lipids. There's ways, transport systems you get them in. Some vitamins have transporters, and that's how they get in. Then you have a lot of these things you think about, like EGCG in green tea and resveratrol in grapes, and these things called small molecules. That's what they call them in pharmacy and pharmaceuticals. And they don't have transporters, and they're just passively diffusing, and some will come in well and some won't. They'll take a long time to get in. Then how's your gut? You may have all kinds of disruption in your gut. You can't absorb this stuff. And so we know that if you get them into the blood, we know that they move the needle on these different processes, but it's hard to get enough in to really move the needle. And so when you're doing this liposomal delivery, and an offshoot of liposomes is nano-emulsions. Liposomes do water solubles, they got a little water droplet in the middle. Nano-emulsions have an oil droplet in the middle, so the oil solubles go in there. And these take everything in and pull them into the blood, peak in your blood in 20 to 30 minutes. All of it goes in. You're doing these capsules, it might take 3, 4, 5, 8 hours for all of it to absorb. So you don't get a real high peak into the blood. And a lot of these things, you want a lot in and you want it in right away. So if you're going to take these supplements you're paying a bunch of money for, you don't want them going right into the toilet. That's what a lot of this stuff does. Or you just absorb so little, you're not really moving the needle. So the liposome gets way more in and it gets it right away. So you have the effect in the body.
So are all liposomes created equal?
Great question. Absolutely not. It's like, are all cars created equal? Is that Mercedes AMG or that Maserati, is that the same as, your Ford Escort from, 1995, These are very different machines. and liposomes are the same, and liposomal delivery has become a big thing, and now I can go to the ingredients, expo, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, we can give you glutathione, we can give you liposomal glutathione," and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm sure you guys are really taking care of your liposomes," and people, all of a sudden, liposomal this, liposomal that, and you gotta understand how you make these things right and, what the ingredient structures are in there, and you talk about these phospholipids that are making these things. So, phosphatidylcholine is the main phospholipid that you're using for this, and raw baker's lecithin has phosphatidylcholine in it. This stuff you're putting into breads or into ice creams, but it's about 15% phosphatidylcholine, and the rest just all these plant waxes and junk, and if it's from soy, you got soy junk in there, and you can put that in water in a blender and blend it up, and you'll make this cloudy milkshake-like solution, and that's what people think that liposomes look like, and really, you can't tell what's going on in there because it's all hazy. Now you look at ours, and they're transparent. You just look right through them. I mean, they might have a color, the B12 will be red, these others will be kinda yellow or orange, but you can see right through it. So what's the difference? We're using pharmaceutical grade, but injectable grade phosphatidylcholine. It's been purified up north of 90%. There's no other junk in there. And we're making these particles small enough that they're smaller than wavelengths of light. You can look at them on electron microscopy. You can use the light scattering laser technology that we use to see the sizes. And these things are so small and so coherent. And because it's transparent, you'll see that everything's dissolved. If you don't get your resveratrol dissolved in this milkshake thing, you'll never see it, or your Quercetin, or your CoQ10. It's just like, I don't know. Over in ours, you're gonna see because it'll all fall out if it's not totally dissolved into these particles. So, the differences are just vast, and when you do uptake studies or these CACO2 bioavailability studies, you see vast differences from ours to these sort of junk liposomes.
So, Dr. Shade, why are we still dying like cavemen in a world with this advanced science? What's the real reason people are aging like spoiled milk instead of, fermenting like wine?
All the interesting stuff that's coming, it's really commercial interest is the whole reason that we're dying like this. Because there's a lot of money being made selling crappy food and crappy pharmaceuticals. Now, what do I mean by crappy pharmaceuticals? Just pharmaceuticals that really aren't helping us. They're dealing with they're made well and they're dealing with some symptom in us, but there's no incentive for the system to make people well and keep it well. They know about all these small molecules out of nature that really work well on the body. There's 2 issues. 1, they can't patent them because they already exist, and 2, they didn't have good delivery systems for them. So, they make some molecule that looks like resveratrol and hits some of those targets, and they can patent that. And, the whole the way we built the food pyramid and, it was just all about money and, the insurance industry, the pharma industry, it's all about just moving things forward. When there's all this science that's really coming to a consensus on how we really take care of health, but we haven't monetized that into this vast system. So they'll say, "Oh, no, that stuff doesn't work," and all this smear stuff, and, supplements don't work at all, but they totally know that they do.
So, you mentioned mercury earlier, and I feel like mercury is like the silent killer or something. Is mercury toxicity the secret killer behind most chronic disease? Or are we like basically just like walking thermometers?
No, no, I mean, that's an overstatement. There was a time in which we had a lot more mercury in us when everybody had the dental amalgams that were half silver, half mercury, a little bit of zinc and copper and stuff.
They're still out there though.
Oh, they're still out there. Yeah, and it's a socioeconomic thing. If you're on Medicaid, you get those. If you're with a decent insurance, you get the composite ones. And mercury is behind, whatever your weakness is, it can accentuate that, and it can imitate so many different diseases, and it can be a huge part of people's problems, but it's not the only thing out there. Now, if you just say toxicity itself, because now, one, going back to the food system is toxic as all get up. I was looking at it was a measurement of toxins in Fruit Loops, and of course, off the range was their glyphosate content. Bayer is gonna stop making glyphosate because they have so many cancer cases against them. And, so we're filled with lots of different toxins, and depending on what your exposures are, you may have more of this one, that one, or the other one. And those really knock down your system and really blow down your resilience. And so for me, I'm trying to make resilient people. I'm trying to take toxins out of them, get them cleaned up from whatever chronic infections are in there, get their immune systems re-regulated, and then give them the stuff that really makes them thrive.
So moving on to detox, why do most detox protocols suck? Before I met you a couple months ago, we were talking about chelation and I think it was what the Cutler method or whatever it was. And that was the only one I knew, yet that's the popular one. And yet you have protocols that are easy to handle.
Yeah, and you don't feel worse for a year before you start feeling better. You start feeling great in a couple of months.
Uh-huh.
And that's a pharmaceutical-based protocol, and it's using pharmaceuticals to try to solve the problem that pharmaceuticals created. And it's a very unsophisticated understanding of your biochemistry and how to regulate your biochemistry. His thought was that everybody has the exact same detox system, and if not, you would die. And it was just so wrong. I mean, it was like 1970s chemistry. The glutathione system, first we have genetic SNPs that make one person stronger than another, and then the overlap of all the different SNPs of susceptibilities and detox systems. And then you have the other toxins that knock down the detox system and the infections that knock it down. All these things that work against it, poor nutrition. When we wind that thing up, one, it's getting stuff out of your body, which is the result we're looking for from, chelation therapy, because then the body's fine. But you got cells and you got the whole detox system of the body. When the cells detox turn up, they're kicking toxins out of the cells into the blood, and then they're circulating. Then liver, kidney, GI are filtering those out. Even if you just turned up the cells response and not the filtration response, you're gonna feel better because the toxins aren't going into their places where they're really hitting the cell and hurting the cell. So you're turning up resistance to the toxin. At the same time, you're turning depuration or removal of it up. That's why those systems work so well because, yeah, you're getting it out, but you're making the cells kick it out, be resistant, and that's why you're feeling better faster.
So the body wants to heal, it's programmed to heal.
Yeah.
Why isn't it pushing these toxins out? I mean, on its own, obviously, without the protocol.
Yeah, well, because it's under a lot of other stressors, and so the stressors can be autonomic nervous system. Autonomic is the automatic nervous system in the background, and this is fight or flight, which is sympathetic autonomic dominance. If you're under stress all the time and you think you're under survival mode all the time, you turn down the parasympathetic, rest, digest, repair, regenerate, detoxify. There's no sense in me trying to detoxify this mercury right now when there's a tiger crashing through the woods to kill me.
That makes so much
So
sense.
as long as you have that perception, yeah, that's what happens. You down regulate all that activity there. And so that's one of the big ones. This is like a tornado coming through here.
Holy shit.
Freaking nuts.
Did something just go flying in here?
Back to why doesn't the body do it? All right, so this autonomic regulation, and you're like, no, I can't do that now. I got to survive. And then you're always in the survival mode. And that can be perceptual, the way you're perceiving danger, but it also could be biochemical. And a lot of the toxins actually go to the glutamate receptor in the brain, which stimulates anxiety and putting you into fight or flight. So the toxin itself, especially mercury does this, puts you in that anxiety mode, which puts you over in that sympathetic dominance that turns down the thing that's gonna move it out. Then there's other toxins that will damage your detox system. They can, they'll create inflammation, which damages the liver's ability to move bile out, which is taking toxins out. They can damage the cell's ability to hit the triggers that turn your detox up. That's why, like, there's all right, here's some main triggers you gotta hit for detox, and then there's a little bit more of an art, like, what are the things that are inhibiting you? And then you could not have enough nutrition, and, you're not getting the things to make glutathione. So it's either you don't have enough of something, or you're dysregulated by a number of toxins, and infections will turn that all down, or you're just under physical or chemical stress. So all this stuff kinda cramps your style in detox.
So moving to an island isn't gonna help me, detox then?
Well, it might, because then your psycho-emotional stresses will go down unless your survival stress then is up. But if the island has some food and shelter, you're gonna start detoxing just fine, and the wireless is hitting us and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Uh,
Alright, so we've got a modern day problem with a modern day, solution. So you claim detox is a gateway to longevity. Are you saying that aging is literally just a trash problem?
well, I'm saying stress accentuates the aging problem. And as the trash gets in there, it's starting to one, it could just muck up the system and turn down a lot of the enzymatic systems that are making you thrive. Two, it can get right into the telomeres, the end caps of the chromosome, cause damage to them, and then the cell goes into what's called senescence. Like senescence is the zombie cells, like a leaf in the fall turns yellow, that's senescent. So your cells are turning into like those yellow leaves, and they just sit there and they propagate inflammation, which is bringing other cells into that death cycle. So toxins can definitely trigger that, and then they can bring stem cells into that. So they are actively driving and accelerating the death process. And on the opposite, when you turn up the detox system, you're actually it's not just taking toxins out of the body, it's refreshing the chemistry inside the cell, and which can take it out of senescence.
Okay, I can reverse it.
You can reverse senescence.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought it's like death, cancer, whatever.
No, 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 it's, actually, uh, doesn't always move senescence doesn't always move into cancer, but it definitely moves into aging rapidly. And so you either have to kill senescent cells, that's called a senolytic, something that cuts the senescent cell, or you have to refresh the chemistry and bring it back out of senescence. So you think about stem cells are going into temporary senescence, you gotta bring those back out. So you're bringing out, a youthfulness to the cell, and then you're hitting some of the triggers of autophagy that are burning up old cells, and senescent cells need to go into autophagy, and you recycle them. You kill the dying cells, which are propagating the dying message, and you recycle them, and you bring them back into new cells. So a lot of this detox process takes away the bad guys, but refreshes and restores the good guys to a younger age.
So, I mean, it seems like a detox is imperative to longevity.
Yeah.
So if we're not detoxing all the time, then are we just like basically aging in slow motion?
Yes. If you're not supporting detox, and, I always say, there's a formal detox and then lifestyle detox. And so formal detox, like you've never really done this, you're gonna have to take, 2, 3 months and like really hammer on this stuff in a formalized manner and really drain the stuff out.
Can you
It might
spell it
be
out,
longer.
or is it different for everybody?
It can be a little different for the different toxins, but the basics of it are we call it push catch detox. You gotta push stuff out of the cells and then drain it out through your liver and catch it in your GI and drain it out through your kidneys or drain it out through your skin and put it into the toilet. So things have to go from the cells to the blood, to the liver, to the bile, GI, and out, or from the blood to the kidneys and piss it out or out through your skin. So you got to open up what we call drainage in the liver, and that's bile flow. Everybody's like, yeah, liver deals with it. What does the liver do? It dumps it into your GI through that green digestive fluid called the bile. That gets all stuck and that stops moving. And stress stops that. Hormone problems stop that. Inflammation stops that. Infections stop that. Toxins can stop that. So we need that going all the time. And you're doing that both actively during your formal detox. And that's a big lifestyle one. Bitters, like Swedish bitters, bitters in your drink, German bitters, those bitter compounds are what really keeps that all moving all the time. And so that's one that you move into your lifestyle. Kidney drainage, that's diuretics. You need stuff that help you pee, and you gotta be drinking water and peeing through there. Laxatives, you gotta be making sure all that moves. You can't be constipated or you're not detoxing. And then sweating is another way you bring that out. So all these drainage systems have to happen, and then we need the compounds that get the tissues to squirt the toxins out into circulation. And these are a lot of these things that we know are good for detox and longevity, like lipoic acid, quercetin, luteolin, resveratrol, berberine, the green tea extract, a lot of different ones that we use for that.
Excellent. So, why do most conventional doctors ignore heavy metals? Are they complicit or just clueless?
Clueless and complicit. What are the sources of heavy metals? They're industrial sources. And then industry doesn't want medicine to recognize that as a problem. And then there's class action lawsuits against industry. And so they kind of quietly suppress a lot of this stuff. I mean, you look at, what was the biggest source of mercury? It was actually medicine. The dentists were putting this half mercury stuff in your mouth and telling you like you're a freaking idiot that there's no way it can hurt you. It's like telling you there's no way that COVID virus came from the COVID lab in Wuhan that makes COVID viruses. Yeah, it came from the seafood market down the street. Like, what, you think you're an idiot? And it's not that everybody's dying from dental amalgams, but everybody's going to have some layer of problem from it. And certain people are genetically susceptible to have that. So they had a massive liability. They've been doing it since the early 1900s.
But even after there were alternatives, they kept doing it.
They kept doing it. Well, they can't just say, oh, it's a problem. And, there's some conspiracy theory about why they kept amalgam going because it was the only way to get mercury into the artisanal miners in Africa who were, doing the gold miners' work and basically mining for gold with mercury, poisoning themselves and selling the gold to the gold companies for much cheaper than it would be if they went and set up a legitimate mine. So, and that was in Africa and that was in South America. Maybe that's why they kept it going. Maybe they didn't want to admit it was a problem. And then you still got these dentists. There's no evidence it's ever a problem. Well, that's because science only knows what is paid to know. They could have figured out exactly who was susceptible to mercury toxicity, exactly what was going on, but who's going to pay for it? Science is very expensive. There's only two sources of science money: government and industry. So Henry Schein, the guys who make all the amalgams, they ain't gonna pay you to do that. I can't even say how I did it. Well, I did mercury pollution work for a gas company in Thailand, and they wouldn't even let us publish all this stuff. They wanted to know that if there was a problem there, and there was, but they didn't want it known. And, they worked to deal with it. But so Shine isn't gonna pay you. The dentists aren't gonna pay you to figure it out. And what's the government gonna pay you? Well, who's in the government? Who's running the NIH? There's industry controls on all that stuff. And so Nobody wants to know, then nobody knows, and then they can act stupid, and your dentist could be all, like, right as rain, and that, "Nobody's ever proven there's a problem there." That's why this stuff propagates for so long, it's money and liability.
Thank you for that. You say the liver is central to anti-aging. Um, why are so few people talking about that?
Yeah,
And we hear about the microbiome,
yeah.
we right, like crazy. What's the other thing recently people were talking about? I forgot, but like, but the liver is a
Liver's so crucial because it's the thing at the center of detoxification. So it's keeping the toxin levels down. Toxin levels are down, everything can thrive. And you'll have these higher order programs going on in your cells. You won't be degenerating and inflaming. It's running metabolism like AMPK, it's, your ability to go between carbs and fat, and having active AMPK switching makes you have active autophagy. Autophagy is eating all the dead cells. You look into neurological health, all the new Alzheimer's work is saying a buildup of beta amyloid plaques is a failure of autophagy. So if the liver's controlling autophagy, it's controlling buildup of plaques in your brain. Thus, it's directly affecting neurodegenerative issues. Liver is central to hormone processing. It's just a huge thing for you. And I don't, we're in a very trendy industry, and people go where the talk is. The microbiome. This is my favorite. Now, it's not that we don't need to control the microbiome and don't need to use probiotics to have a healthier microbiome. But a lot of people think, and you probably think this, like the microbiome keeps us alive. Like we would live without a microbiome.
I mean, we can't live without a heart. I mean, there are a lot of functions that go on in
No,
the body.
absolutely a complete lie. So they've done all these animal studies where they sterilize an animal and they raise them in a sterile environment so they never have a microbiome. You think these are poor, decrepit, horrible animals? They live longer, healthier lives than animals with a microbiome.
Well, how is that possible? What
Because you don't need anything from your microbiome. A microbiome is not an essentiality, it is an inevitability. It's inevitable that we're going to have it because we live in a microbial environment. So we got to have a good one. And you think the microbiome controls you. You control the microbiome more than it controls you. They took these animals, and it's known that all these animals get dysbiosis as they get older. They get a worse microbiome. Oh, that must because they're eating the wrong food. They haven't had enough yogurt, they haven't eaten enough of these guys' probiotics, right? No, so I did this for so long. The immune system's controlling the microbiome. So they take all the animals and the young animals, take their immune systems out. You can actually like filter out all the immune cells. They put the old immune cells in the young animal, the young immune cells in the old animal. The old animal that had a bad microbiome, dysbiosis, has young immune cells and it gets a good microbiome. The young animal that had good microbiome now has old immune cells and it gets bad microbiome. It's a two-way street, but you're more controlling than it is. And yeah, there's these different elements and vitamins and stuff that are made in there, but they're non-essential. And so it's just, our perception of things. You were asking, why aren't we focused on the liver? I don't know. We're focused all over here on this thing, and then one day, the right influencer talks about liver and then everything's about liver.
Well, that's the thing. I only know one other guy talking about liver. It's Siggy at Deliverance. I don't know if you know him. And he's reversing fatty livers and things like that because he believes, like you do, that that's where it's at. But I hear with the microbiome, and again, I'm a correspondent. I interview people. I publish what they tell me if it's factual. But they say like we're able to detect cancers and um you know lot of different things. What else? Whatever it is going on in the body, and they're able to reverse disease through the microbiome. And then you've heard of like fecal implants and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
if there was no microbiome, none of it would matter. But a bad microbiome is a problem.
mhm.
And so the bad is signaling and causing disease, so you're trying to overwhelm it by bringing it back to a good. But if there was no microbiome, there wouldn't have been a cancer that you had to change. There's nothing you had to change with your fecal implant. So it's just, it's just understanding,
Yeah.
core principles.
No, it makes
And I still, I struggle to keep my microbiome on track, and I'll take probiotics trying to nudge it over, but probiotics don't stay in your gut.
Yeah.
You're not repopulating. That's a myth.
Yeah.
But they're nudging it. They're signaling to get it over to a better thing. But your immune control is the biggest thing you can do for it.
So you mentioned sweating earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Are saunas just a trendy way to sweat? Are they one of the most underrated longevity tools ever?
I have my bed, and 3 foot away from it, I have my sauna. Sauna is I have a clear light.
I meant like it's a red light or it's
Yeah, it's infrared,
yeah.
near and far infrared mixed, and I took a big red light mat that you can lay on and screwed it into the wall, so you're sitting on the red light mat while you're in there. I love them, and there's tons of data from Finland. The Finnish have been doing saunas for a long time and what they're able to do. The nice thing about that versus running cardio sweating, remember the sympathetic, parasympathetic. If you can sweat in a relaxed mode, you're going to detox mode. If you're going at boxing, you're in sympathetic, fight or flight, right? You're fighting. So your autonomics aren't set up for detox while you're sweating. So if we can sweat while we're chilling and our autonomics are ready for detox, it'll be more effective. So sweating is, detox is only one part of the sweating. There's also what are called heat shock proteins. And heat shock proteins are also where a lot of adaptogens work, and they're adapting your body to stress. They're cleaning up your body. They work with the detox system. They're resetting a lot of stuff in the brain, and they're making more resilient against stressors. And so it's like detox, adaptation all at once.
So now, I'll give you a personal example. I wear blood glucose monitor just for fun. I go into the sauna, I spike within 20, 25 minutes.
It goes up.
Yeah, yeah. And, so you're and I've talked to people and said, oh, it's normal. And so I say to myself, assuming that's normal, you agree with that, is that really keeping me in a parasympathetic, sympathetic? What state am I in if that's happening? Isn't my body shocked?
It doesn't. You don't know why it's doing that. I haven't really thought about that. There's probably a mobilization, maybe AMPK activation, where you actually mobilize. You'll mobilize stored sugars. You mobilize glycogen. You may be mobilizing energy, turning it into sugar.
Would you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, I think it's fine. Everybody's like, "Oh, sugar's bad. It's the devil." I just started seeing this stuff coming out now about how good sugar is for and how good carbs are for you, and it's all balanced stuff, and so everybody got all jerked off about sugar for so long. So how high does your blood sugar spike?
It'll go to like maybe 150, 160.
What do you get when you eat? Have you eaten before you?
No, I usually go in fasted because I know it's gonna spike. So I'll go in at like 70, 80, something like that.
Well, I'm gonna have to run this on myself. I mean, that's a large spike.
I mean, I can even share the diet.
Yeah. Did other people see that high?
I don't know about other people. So normally, I don't really spike when I eat, and I have like a pretty balanced diet. I'll go up to like maybe 140, come down, right? I watch carbs in general, right? I'm a pretty skinny guy. I'm active. And I asked one of the other doctors I interviewed, and he gave me an answer for it. Right away, he was like, he didn't think, because I texted him, I was like, dude, what the fuck's going on? And he gave me a pretty good answer. It's on my phone. I can look it up and
Oh yeah, look at that. I've never heard that. I guess just haven't. I don't have a continuous. I got the sugar meters, but it's always stick it.
yeah.
Now I'm gonna have to stick myself when I'm in the sauna. And he said, "Oh yeah, everybody does that," or it's unique to certain people.
I don't know if he said everybody, but he said it was a normal reaction. He wasn't concerned about it. So I'm going to have him on the show, and we're going to talk about it. 'cause, that's what it's about. But
Yeah,
again,
yeah.
I'm just giving.
Now we gotta go check into that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, and, if it happens to you, hopefully we can, figure out what it is doing, and if it doesn't, then we know it's.
But, I mean, so, I mean, there's data from a long time on these things, the fins have been studied forever. And all-cause mortality goes down, and the guys who do it 5 times a week have better results than the ones who do it 3 times a week, or better than the ones who do it 1, and better than the ones who do it 0.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really conclusive.
Yeah, I'm not a cold plunge fan, but sauna, I
Yeah, it's a
definitely.
little cold.
I
If I'm around enough of my bros, and we're like out doing it, I'll pop in there and do it. I can handle it, but
Yeah.
I don't actively seek it out.
Yeah, well, I mean, me too then, so, we can share that one. NAD+, all right? Is NAD+, therapy basically anti-aging in a syringe, or is it just, like, some, like, bullshit for biohackers?
No, NAD management in the body is super, super good. And there's different ways to get there. You do NAD precursors, and they'll help you build cellular stores of NAD. Having low NAD levels is no bueno. High levels is always much better.
Mhm.
Uh, then do you do precursors, do these injections of NAD. And injections of NAD, I mean, if you've ever done IV, it's like shit, piss, puke, all at once, if that goes too fast. You just wanna hurl everywhere. And, there's a question of exactly how that works. A bit, "Well, it's making you detox." And that is like bullshit. NAD's not supposed to be in your blood, and when you put a whole bunch in the IV, there's a shock response in your body, like some organ must have just been split open and all this stuff spilled into the blood, and that creates a response to wanna try to fix your NAD, levels, and so that I think the way it works is it turns up your NAD synthesis. It's not as simple as the NAD just going in there. It's this holistic thing. And some people who are sick enough, that's, not the best way to go. It can be very shocking to the system. But if you're managing to get your NAD levels up and get your NAD metabolome really cycling, that's a wonderful thing for longevity.
So talking about longevity, you called mitochondria the power plants of youth. How do we stop them from, turning into rusty engines?
Well, NAD is part of that. Detox is part of that. Fasting and autophagy is part of that. So as the mitochondria, they wear out, they are rusty little engines, right? And then you put little markers on them. And then when you go into autophagy, you go and you collect all the ones with markers, and you break them down and recycle them and down and use them to make new things. And so 2 aspects of longevity in your mitochondria, well, you have to preserve healthy mitochondria. So you have to kill old ones and take them away. You gotta preserve the new ones from being poisoned by the toxins, and you have to turn up sirtuin activation, part of which is, or the main dog of which is NAD in that. So NAD and then sirtuin activating compounds like resveratrol and quercetin, terostilbene, those help you make more mitochondria. It's called mitochondrial biogenesis. So you gotta protect them, you gotta clear away old ones and make new ones, and that is probably the most core anti-aging thing you can do.
So, with all these products out there, why are we still aging?
Well, aging is inevitable.
But I'm saying, like, are we still missing pieces to that?
Yeah.
Because it's a bigger picture, or is just like you said, aging is inevitable and there's nothing to be done about it?
Well, this question, is 120 our set point, and back in my sort of, you know, crazy brain, there's these legends of old races living a lot longer than us, and I mean, it pretty much seems like 120 is our set point.
Yeah.
And, were we genetically engineered by guys from Nibiru who said you're never getting past 120 because, the joke around it is you only get smart around 50 and then your body starts tanking. So you never have a
Right.
smart and capable animal on this world.
Yeah,
You're either
yeah,
like big and dumb
yeah.
or you're smart and falling apart. And so it's like, so if we can get smart and just hold that thing until it just like crash like the Bluesmobile breaking down at the end of the movie, that's my goal. So how do you keep that stuff all up there and what goes into that? And there's a bunch of bins and you got to get them all handled. And you need hormones, you need detox, you need autophagy, you need sirtuins, uh, you need, uh, peptides, you need stem cell renewal. That pretty much hits all the things you got, and NADs, in there somewhere too.
Yeah.
You hit all that stuff, and then you have lifestyle stuff, you're eating all right, and your mental state is cool and you're chill, you should be able to really extend your health span real nicely. And we only got this stuff in place in the last couple of years,
Yeah.
so we don't know.
Yeah.
And so we'll see how, my friends age,
Yeah.
your friends age, see what the next generation does. But I think there's a lot of us now that are 50 and have all this stuff in place. And let's see how we're looking when we're 80.
My problem is I keep counting more and more gray hairs, so that's why I don't think it's more.
Freaking, well, I know. I mean, look at me, and I mean, I always say, it's like look at Obama before and after a president. All the
Yeah,
presidents, the
they go.
stress burns you out. And it was like, I remember just seeing this. I've been running this company for a while. It's just like, I'm like, shit. And that was before I really learned
I mean, are we just?
it.
Are you and I just fooling ourselves? That's the thing.
No, I don't think so. I'm
No,
56. I act like a freaking
no, you're a fucking rock star.
monster.
I hung with you this weekend, man. Like, we hit it hard, and we're here again today. So listen, again, well, maybe it's placebo, right? Who knows? I mean, listen, I ask you these things not to insult you, but like really just to open up this existential can and
Yeah.
really talk about it. Because sometimes you're too close to the fire, right? Okay, so again, you always take me to the next topic. This is what I love about this interview. Everyone's injecting themselves with like exosome and peptides. Like, which ones actually work? Which ones are bullshit? Like, let's break down what the exosomes are, what the peptides are, which ones you think are the real important ones.
Yeah. So exosomes are like milking a stem cell. So mesenchymal stem cells, they come out of umbilical cords. You can grow them out in these glass plates or these, glass vessels, and they stick to the side. Now, ideally, you grow those out, scrape them up, and inject them in. But back in the first Bush years, the elder Bush, they were worried about people doing this with fetal stem cells and, harvesting from abortion clinics and stuff. And so the religious right cut that off. Even though these are coming from cord blood stuff, they could have made that exemption, but they didn't. So now, if you want that kind of stuff, you go down to Colombia or Panama or Mexico where they're allowed to do that. Up here, they're like, well, we're not going to give you the cell, but what's coming out of the cell? And these things called exosomes, and they're little liposomes with all the growth factors. And it's thought that that's how that stem cells work. They lodge somewhere and release all these growth factors. So we take the growth factors out, and those are called exosomes. A couple different companies making them. A lot of opinions on which ones are good and which ones are bad. These are amazing. Those are terrible. It's like they're all pretty good. And, we're working out exactly what the difference is between them all. So exosomes are something you can get. Whole cells are something you can get. Whole cells tend to be like you inject them into where to have an injury tends to be much more inflaming and painful while it's regenerating. Exosomes are always anti-inflammatory. All those are tools in this whole thing. And I'm not gonna say, which company I think are better than others, but, there's Wharton's jelly, there's a bunch of different stuff out there, but I think those are a big tool for anti-aging. I think they're way overpriced, but, they're a great tool.
Hopefully, costs will come down too. Then,
Yeah, I mean, you pay $3,000 for 50 billion exosomes. I think it should be like 500-600 bucks. And I think we'll get there. Then you have peptides. And assuming they're properly made peptides, it's not hard to make peptides well. I mean, you need equipment and stuff, and it takes time and stuff, but making the perfect peptides, it's there. So then which peptides do you take? And they're all doing slightly different things. There used to be like 5 peptides. Now there's like hundreds, and they're super important. They're big regulators of how your body does things. And a part of the aging is you're not signaling a youthful signal. And this is, all the exosomes, the stem cells, the peptides giving a useful signal. Like, let's act like we're young. And, for whatever reason, these signals are going down with time. The signal to rebuild and regrow and stuff, and then we don't do enough, and then we're getting lines and wrinkles, and our skin's getting saggy and stuff. And, that's some mixture of the signaling and the senescent cells. It's all going in there together. So the youthful signaling is what all that's about. And so then in the peptides, you have the BPC-157. It's signaling regrowth and repair. TB500 signaling regrowth and repair. Copper GHK similar. KPV, and sometimes like KPV is more barrier, like rebuild the GI, whereas like TB and BBC, they do some stuff there, but like, you just destroyed some joint. You have people in surgery. I've given this stuff to people who rotator cuff surgery. They go into physical therapy, and the guys are like, "What the hell did you do?" Like, you're not supposed to be moving your arm, but like, what? And it's like, it's supposed to be tied in here. Don't move it. They're like, it doesn't hurt. The repair happens so much faster. Then you got bioregulators like epitalin and thymolin, things that signal that were studied in Russia and whole all-cause mortality changes. People live longer. The epitalin signaling the telomere expansion, thymolin signaling against this is one of the biggest things, and probably this is the thing that we gotta figure out most clearly to be living much longer is, the thymus involution or thymus atrophy. Your thymus, which is regulating the whole immune system, is starting to shrivel up and die long before we do. You're like turned into a raisin, your thymus turned into a raisin long before you did. And then you've got old signaling for old immune things. You're not responding to how you are now. You've got it puts autoreactive signaling out. So you start this general autoimmunity, even though it's not like a thyroid autoimmunity or RA, it's this general attack on things. And that's overwhelming T regulatory activity, which is saying, hey, let's have immune peace in here. So this is why the microbiome's going out of control, because that thymus just isn't signaling right anymore. And so it's just going. Some people say it's not even working for you at all over 35 or 40. And how do we restore that? And some of the early work, the TRIM trials, they were doing growth hormone and DHEA and a couple other things. They were showing that they were changing the thymus back to a young thymus. And in the immune cell, it's called immunosenescence. The whole, and so that's a big thing, moving things back. And, so the thymic peptides, thymosin 1 alpha, thymulin, those are big for that. Growth hormones, big for that. All the other hormones like DHEA are big for that. So I think we'll figure out how to really get that thing running. And that'll be more of a headquarters of longevity than we were ever expecting it to be.
Wow. Mitochondrial health. Do you think it can predict your longevity better than blood work or other ways? Others?
Might be able to say what state you're at right now, but you can rebuild it all. It's like the thymus is a lot harder to rebuild. That's like, oh man, how do I get this raisin back into like a, full, or, this prune back into a full plum? Mitochondria can be pretty well decimated, and over, months to years, you can rebuild the whole thing. So, but the mitochondrial health will show you a lot about the trajectory you're on
Yeah, yeah.
and the damage you've accumulated.
So when we talk about mitochondrial health, you said we can repair that. What can we do to repair, upgrade them, restore them?
Well, you're gonna have to stimulate autophagy, so you're gonna have to be AMPK activated. That means you're gonna have to do some sort of fasting, intermittent fasting, carb restriction, some blend in there so that you can go kill the old ones. Autophagy, this is mitophagy, it's a subset of autophagy, breaking down the old mitochondria and recycling them. Then you need the raw materials for new one. You'll need a lot of phosphatidylcholine to make new ones. You'll need signalers for mitochondrial biogenesis. And so you need NAD for sure. You'll need something like PQQ. You need CoQ10 in there along with your phospholipids, maybe resveratrol, pterostilbene, quercetin, all these things that signal you to make more mitochondria. and then you can build those all back up. But you got to make sure if they're all beat down that you're not sitting on a huge metals load. You don't have a lot of mercury, cadmium, and arsenic and lead in there that are killing them. There's not tons of mold in there. So you got to clear away the things that got you there. You got to restore the metabolic switches to have autophagy to clear away the old. And then you have to signal up and give the raw materials to make the new.
What's your take on methylene blue?
Methylene blue is cool. I might be worried about taking it like all the time, every day. They talk about having blue brains and autopsies and stuff. But it's a great, it's so say you're on that mitochondrial, like my mitochondria are all screwed and I need to rebuild them. Methylene blue would be a tool in there because it rescues the damaged electron transport chain, starts bringing that back up. It's also antimicrobial. It kills a lot of the chronic infections. So it's definitely, it's a great tool in the arsenal for the mitochondria.
Cool, cool. I know this has been going long. If you got a lot of time, we can go on. If not, I got a couple like little questions. Like,
Keep it on the shorter
yeah.
side.
So I have this rapid fire I do at the end where like I'll ask you a question and you give me like, yeah, I like it, I hate it, and whatever, things like that. So like coffee enemas.
I don't like to do them, but they do work. People tend to say, "Oh, there's 8 times more glutathione in your liver." It does upregulate some stuff, and I know a lot of people have really needed them to clear out the liver when the bile flow is stuck and it's not being able to drain stuff out of the liver. And so coffee is a radical way to do it. We do it more gradually with bitters and phospholipids.
Okay. Liposomal vitamin C.
Love it. It's not the most necessary. I mean, there's something special that liposomal C does that regular C doesn't do, but the bioavailability difference isn't like so massive. Like if you're going to invest in a liposome, maybe you got a glutathione or, there's a lot of others that are harder to absorb.
Okay. EMF.
Love it. It was terrible. It can be a real issue for people, and it's unregulated inflammation and uh, driving a lot of free radical stress by deregulating these things called voltage gated calcium channels. And so it can be very dysregulating on a biological level and a neurological level.
What do you do about it to control it?
Turn it off.
All right.
But you also got to keep your resilience up. NAD, sirtuins, AMPK actually all stabilize you against EMF.
Excellent. Heavy metal testing.
I think that's just baseline part of functional medicine. What metals are there? What do we got to deal with?
NAD plus patches.
I don't know enough about the patches to know. I don't know if these are David Schmidt's things.
Huge controversy on it.
Like LifeWave?
Yeah, I think, well, LifeWaves, I think those are different. I think
Those are energetic.
Those are
all right. And then there's iontophoresis patches, these ion polarities to try to drive stuff in. I just don't know enough.
zeolite.
Great, like high functioning clay, totally overrated by these people who worship it as this thing, and it shouldn't be broken down to this nano size to get into the blood. Then you got little shards of glass in the blood. Do they do something to you? Yeah, because you have shards of glass in your blood and it's freaking your immune system out and it upregulates to do a bunch of stuff. I might do that if I had cancer and I wanted to freak out my macrophages to go try to eat shit, but I'm not going to use it for detox. I use a lot of zeolite, but it stays in the gut.
Okay. Red light therapy on your balls.
Daily, just because my red light goes like this, it hangs down and just like covers. So I'm sitting on it, and every day I'm like, wow, got that covered.
All right. Mold detox sprays.
Mold detox what?
Sprays, like
What's a mold detox spray?
like for your nose spray, like help to detox from like mold.
Well, that's antimicrobials. Yeah, it'll be like EDTA and antimicrobials up the nose to kill. It's not to detox.
Oh, it's not.
It's to kill living funguses up there. Absolutely. If you've got those.
If you got those.
Yeah.
Okay. We kind of talked about this, like fasting for 5+ days.
Well, we didn't talk about it directly, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's a great metabolic reset for making you metabolically flexible. It gets AMPK way up, gets autophagy way up. You detox real heavy if you can handle it. And you talk about like in Ayurveda, doshas, and people who are real airy, that's a little bit much for them. They need to
Mhm.
do shorter ones. So, if you can handle it, it's great.
Okay.
Especially, I mean, you got cancer or something, you're doing a lot of those.
Okay. Last three closing questions. What's one anti-aging truth that would get you banned from mainstream media?
Why would I say it on mainstream media? Even if you're not mainstream? I don't even know how to answer that question.
Yeah, it's all right. We can pass.
Yeah.
Um, if you had $500 to spend on biohacking today, what would it be on? Like the essential stuff.
$500, because so much of it you can just do yourself. I might get a red light mat for that.
Yeah. Okay.
Or, 500 bucks, I'd get let's spend all of it on a full detox system.
There you go.
Because 500 bucks, that could get you like 1 to 2 month system.
Yeah. Cool. Cool. Finish this sentence. If everyone did this one thing, aging as we know it would slow down.
Eat less.